Right. Hi, hello, and welcome to Expanding Enterprise Value with a Multi-Cloud Application Platform. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Red Hat and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because I love when we get to dig into research and reports and explore those key takeaways and impacts. And what's even cooler about today's conversation is that we're almost getting like the TLDR, right? The too long didn't read version of a Forrester Research Total Economic Impact Study commissioned by Red Hat, which was designed to examine the potential ROI for organizations considering a switch to Red Hat OpenShift cloud services. So what I love about this is you can and probably should definitely go back. In fact, download right now the full report after we wrap. But for those of us who like to learn through discussion, this is your moment. Today is your day because we have two top experts here with us from Red Hat and from Forrester Research who will review, discuss, and explain this report along with some helpful interpretations and insights. So we have lots to cover, lots to get into, and definitely a lot to be excited about. But I want to take a quick step back. We're going to explore a few housekeeping points before we get this show on the road. So as always, we'll start with a little guided tour of your webinar console. The absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to speak directly with experts like we have here with us today. So please do get those questions in your questions window. If we do not get to your question in our live Q&A, we will absolutely make sure that all of the questions asked get sent to the Red Hat team, so you will get responses back. So make sure you're getting those questions in all the way throughout our session today. In fact, we're going to give this a little test run right now. We're going to make sure you're all alive, awake, alert, and enthusiastic out there. So I want to see your highs and hellos. I want to hear how you're doing today. I see you, Robert. Bonjour in Winnipeg. I like it. I've got John. I've got Jim. I've got Morteza. I've got Chris. I've got a whole awesome crew. Akshansh from Kentucky. Okay. Zhang, Deb, Gilbert, as always, good to see you. Jorge, wow, we got quite the crew here with us. I definitely want to keep hearing all of those wonderful shout outs as we go through our session today. Let us know what you're thinking, what your responses are, and especially what those questions are. Now, that questions window is also a great place to reach out and let us know if you're having any technical issues. Knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't come up. But if the tech gremlins get a hold of you today, here's your step one. Step one, browser refresh. Browser refresh is the equivalent of have you tried turning it on and off again. So you're going to do a browser refresh and see if that cures those problems. If it doesn't, then you can shoot us a message right there in the questions window and our team will be there to help you out. All right, so we talked about the questions window. Now we're going to jump over to the handouts tab because that handouts tab is absolutely chock full of cool resources and takeaways, including access to the reports that we are going to be digging into today. So if you're someone who likes to follow along with the reading as the professor's going through, if that takes you back to your university days, download that report right now and hold on to it. Even if you don't want to look at it right now, I promise you're going to want to explore it a little bit more after we wrap. So get that ready and waiting for you. You can also spend some time exploring the Red Hat site. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we close, but I want to keep things moving right along. So handouts tab, questions tab, we've covered those. The last piece of excitement that I have for you all is that $250 Amazon gift card that you can see up on your screen there. Now, we will be giving that away at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here live and present at the webinar in order to win that $250 gift card. So stay tuned for that. You also do need to meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. And if you're not sure what those T's and C's are, you can find them listed for you again right back in that handouts tab. So head on over and start exploring there. All right, well, that is it for the housekeeping, which means it is time to get rolling on our session. And I am so happy to introduce you to our wonderful panel of experts here, this dynamic duo. Today, we will be chatting with Brooke Jackson, Senior Product Marketer at Red Hat, and Kim Finnerty, Senior Consultant at Forrester Consulting. So we have an awesome lineup ahead of us. Brooke, I think you're actually going to kick us off and kind of lead us through this conversation with Kim as we dig into this report. So I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Brooke.
Hello all, and welcome to this brief webinar outlining a recent study of the total economic impact of Red Hat OpenShift cloud services. My name is Brooke Jackson. I'm a Senior Product Marketer at Red Hat, and I'm joined by Kim Finnerty, Senior Consultant at Forrester Research. In the few minutes that we have with you today, Kim and I are going to give you a baseline for how Forrester approaches the total economic impact studies, and then get into some details of their findings when interviewing OpenShift Cloud Services customers over a range of industries and geographies. We'll dive into the financial summary, have just a brief refresh of OpenShift, and then round things out with a Q&A. So first, I'd like to take just a minute to level set on Red Hat OpenShift to make sure that you are familiar with the solution that the study is based on and what Kim is going to dive into here shortly. So OpenShift, as hopefully many of you know, is a comprehensive application platform that many of the world's top enterprises use to build, deploy, manage, and scale their applications. The real beauty of OpenShift is that it's a single unified platform that your developers and your ops teams can use with the same tools, the same consistent experience anywhere, regardless of where they're deploying on public clouds, data center, and at the edge. You can deploy OpenShift as a fully managed service in the cloud, which takes that load off your internal teams, kind of helps you get started more quickly. Or you can deploy self-managed, a more self-managed model that gives you a bit more control and flexibility. Or of course, you can do both, which we often see as well. So in terms of this study, we're focused on our fully managed offering, Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services. And Kim is going to take us through how the study was developed and the results that Forrester found. So Kim, off to you.
Great. Thanks for that overview of the platform, Brick. So I'm going to jump into the discussion of what Forrester found in our research. The study that we conducted for Red Hat is one that we call Total Economic Impact, as Brooke mentioned. And it's a methodology that we've been using for over 20 years to help decision makers evaluate the potential impact of technology investments and to make the business case internally in their organizations to justify those investments. We look at hard and soft benefits and costs of the technology, and we also assess the ways in which the technology provides customers with additional agility and flexibility. And then finally, we identify the risks involved in the investment and adjust all the calculations accordingly so that the projections we provide are as reliable as possible. The methodology we use involves a due diligence stage first, where we speak with key stakeholders at the technology provider, in this case Red Hat, to really understand the product or the technology itself, including what the provider thinks are the key features and benefits that customers are really interested in. We also spend some time conferring with the relevant Forrester analysts in that space. So we talk with them about market dynamics, customer needs, and perceptions. And then in the next phase, we actually go ahead and speak to customers who've been using the technology for long enough to have experienced and measured its benefits in their organization. In this case, we spoke with individuals at 10 different customer organizations, and I'll say a little bit more about them later. Once we've completed all this research and analyzed the findings, we create a financial model for a representative organization, which we call the composite organization. And that organization represents all the customers we've interviewed, and it allows us to develop a single projection of the technology's financial impact on an organization. That makes the analysis more useful to you as decision makers because now you have a single model rather than 10 different financial business cases. And you can use that single model to create your own business case by customizing it using the detailed tables that are in the study. So at the end of the webinar, Brooke will provide a link to the full study, which includes all the detailed calculations, as well as lots of anecdotes, use cases, assessments from your peers at these organizations. It's definitely worth the read if you're thinking about Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services. So to summarize the results of the study and to basically preempt the next 10 minutes of presentation, Forrester found that Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services would deliver a 468% return on investment to the composite organization based on the research we did with customers. The present value of the benefits would be almost $5 million. over the course of 3 years, and the present value of the costs would be less than $1 million. So that's a net present value over 3 years of just over $4 million for this composite organization. And again, that's something that you can play around with yourself when you've got the detailed tables in front of you. One interviewee that we spoke with summed up the impact of the technology on their financial services organization very well. They said, before Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services, we had self-managed data centers, and we acknowledged that we were not in the business of managing data centers. We saw that getting and retaining talent with the skills to manage container solutions was also not our core business. We looked at some Red Hat competitors, but they didn't come with batteries included. That is specifically what we needed, because besides not being an infrastructure company, we're also not a cloud platform company. So this is a kind of comment that we heard repeatedly from all of the customers we spoke to, right? They really were looking to be able to offload a lot of this responsibility and let them do their core business and what they're really good at. So let's dive in a little bit to what we heard from these folks when we talked with them. As I mentioned before, we spoke with IT executives at 10 different companies, and they really cover the spectrum in terms of their size, their industries, and their experience with containerization. So you can see we have financial services, education, energy, telecom, apparel manufacturing, logistics, and more represented here. And some of you probably have jobs or titles similar to the folks that we spoke with. So you can get a little additional confidence knowing that they know some of the limitations and the pain points that you're dealing with now, things that may have brought you to this webinar in the first place. And if I were to summarize what they told us they were dealing with before deploying Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services, it would be what you see on the left-hand side of this slide. Despite their mix of architectures and their various levels of experience with containerization and Kubernetes in particular, they all had developers spending a significant amount of their time manually creating and maintaining their environments. So as a result, they were running inefficient and costly applications. And since they had limited people in-house with deep experience in containerization and a limited ability to recruit those resources, they really had a difficult time responding to the needs of their businesses by innovating and quickly operationalizing new applications and services. One of the developers at an apparel manufacturer confirmed that Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services provided a solution to those pain points. As they put it, with Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services, the business gets features faster. We're more flexible in setting up a new application or a new model faster because it's less code to get started. So after speaking with people at all 10 organizations and gathering data about how and how much the platform had impacted their firms, Forrester created a composite organization to represent them. In this case, it's a $10 billion global company with 20,000 employees, so a pretty big company. The company employs 70 developers, and it also has 10 DevOps professionals. So keep this company in mind as we go through the numbers I'll be sharing, because of course, your organization may be bigger or smaller than this. It may have a different proportion of developers and DevOps folks. It may operate in a more limited geographic area, but the problems you face are probably quite similar to those that were being faced by these customers. And you should find the story here relevant. When you have the full study in hand, again, you can make your own adjustments in the numbers to help build out your own business case that's more relevant for your particular organization. So let me talk a little bit about those benefits. So as I mentioned earlier, the total present value of the benefits that the composite organization would experience was almost $5 million. And this was broken out into 3 core benefit areas. The first is development velocity, how quickly the team was able to get products and applications out the door to the business or to the customers. It was worth $1.5 million to the composite organization. The second benefit is the savings from reducing the amount of time valuable development resources spend managing the infrastructure. This actually had the largest financial impact at $2.1 million. And the third and final area of benefit is in overall efficiency of the DevOps team. This was worth $1.3 million to the organization. And similar to the developer benefit we just covered, it relates in this case to the DevOps team's ability to focus on what it's good at. So let's dive into each of these benefit areas a little bit. In terms of development velocity, the interviewees we spoke with, both those who were new to containerization and those more familiar with it, told Forrester that Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services vastly accelerated their application development and testing process. For instance, it expedited the time required to spin up environments, which freed up developer time to focus on higher value activities. Additionally, the platform was intuitive and came with familiar integrated tools, but it also allowed those tools to be swapped for any preferred AWS or Azure native tools that the developer might prefer. It also offered more transparency into the underlying data sources, and all of these components accelerated the lead times on development and really enabled faster onboarding into the development process. So in this case, the composite organization speeds up development time by 65%, which provides a $1.5 million benefit to the company as developers spend less time building images and testing, etc. A developer at an apparel company told Forrester, "You reduce the lines of code you have to monitor when you change things. This means smaller, faster release cycles, so the business gets new features faster." And the head of cloud native transformation at a financial organization added, "We have automated a lot of the human handoffs required between teams, which has saved weeks on lead time delays." In terms of the second benefit area, reduced infrastructure management, folks told us that beyond slowing down the development process, they also found that the legacy solutions they were working with required developers to produce new environments manually. And that could take weeks and often involved multiple stakeholders. And during this environment spin-up period, the developers were limited in their ability to progress further on their projects. So interviewees shared that with Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services, they no longer needed their developers to allocate time for infrastructure maintenance work, which was as much as 20% of the time that they were spending in the previous environment. So for instance, a director at the telecom company stated previously our developers had to build the instances themselves. Probably a fifth of their time was infrastructure maintenance. Developers shouldn't care about infrastructure. They should press a button and it should be in production. So by handing developers an additional 20% of their time back, this benefit had the biggest financial impact, freeing up $2.1 million of time for those folks to better understand customer needs and to create innovative solutions to help the business. And finally, the third benefit area was operational efficiency. So using Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services meant that native operational tools for security and governance tasks could be used within that environment. They did not need to maintain those. So in doing so, the full-time DevOps staff who were responsible for these tasks of security and governance could shift their focus to higher value customer enablement activities. Additionally, the interviewees' organizations didn't have to allocate as many DevOps staff to maintain the environment for application development. So things such as servicing maintenance windows and conducting hardware repairs. By outsourcing this work to Red Hat, that also meant more consistency in both how the work was conducted and the expected outcomes. So the IT innovation manager at a nonprofit educational institution described the impact this way. With Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services, we don't have to create new servers or install anything. We can focus on other things. The workload shifted from doing infrastructure maintenance to supporting application development. Now, what we find whenever we do these studies is that there are a number of benefits where customers really just can't put their finger on the dollar value. It doesn't make those benefits any less compelling. In fact, in times, they can be more valuable than some of the quantified benefits. So in this case, there were 5 of these unquantified benefits that interviewees described. The first one related to developer satisfaction and retention, which you can probably guess, given all the time I've spent talking about moving tasks from administrative maintenance kind of tasks to actual developer work. So the organizations that transitioned to Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services saw the impact of using this service on the happiness of their developers. The director in telecom said, well-being and retention of developers is another big benefit. Developers are happier because there's less pressure for them to get everything right in a small window. Now we can do small changes more frequently. The second unquantified benefit was improved elasticity, really being able to shift up and down according to the business's needs. So interviewees described the benefit of flexible capacity provisioning with Red Hat OpenShift. The head of cloud native transformation at a financial organization said, we can ask Red Hat to provision a virtual machine at any time of day. To dynamically scale up and scale down our server park is very useful for us, and where we were historically always resource constrained in terms of how many servers fit in the rack of the data center we manage. We now have the flexibility to expand and to shrink whenever we want. So that's a very big cost savings, but also it allows us to do computations we could never have done before. The third area was in performance reliability. So using Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services made the system and the overall application development infrastructure more reliable. And interviewees noted a real lack of system failures and outages. Additionally, interviewees cited the use of cross-tooling that added a layer of redundancy. So a container platform solution architect in the energy industry said, we're now avoiding a couple incidents a year that would have either impacted internal employees or external customers. In terms of improved security and reduced risk, interviewees shared that Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services automated certain features and security updates, which eliminated the need for manual maintenance while still ensuring that their environment was secure. The developer at the apparel company explained, before managed services, we ran major security updates twice a year. Now we're able to use tools to automatically scan for used packages. Every time we deploy, the libraries are scanned for vulnerabilities. And then finally, the reduced total cost of ownership. Interviewees explained that using tools baked into the OpenShift platform or associated with the larger cloud vendor ecosystem they were working with enabled their organizations to cut down on redundant tooling or time spent learning new tools. Interviewees' organizations that previously operated in on-premises container platform saved on physical server costs, as well as the associated annual support and licensing efficiencies. And they saved on the costs dedicated to managing those platforms. So, of course, there's no such thing still as a free lunch, and there are costs involved in implementing Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services to attain the benefits that we've been discussing. In this case, the cost is primarily in the fees for the technology itself, which would run this composite organization a little over $500,000 over the 3-year period of the analysis. Keep in mind, obviously, depending on the size of your organization, the fees that you'd be paying would vary. The organization also incurs some internal costs, so just under $100,000 for the time spent training people, and about $250,000 fully loaded for a dedicated resource to lead the program. So that brings us back to the summary I provided at the start. The total economic impact of Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services is a 468% ROI, based on, in this case of the composite organization, over a $4 million net present value. As you can see from the cash flow graphic also, the investment pays for itself in less than 6 months. So with all that as background, I'll hand it back over to Brooke to summarize what Red Hat OpenShift Cloud Services is all about and to share some next steps, including the link to the full study I talked about, and then we'll open it up for your questions. Brooke?
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. I think one of my favorite quotes is one of the ones you mentioned about shifting the team's workload from infrastructure maintenance to application development. I love that. I love that focus that it brings organizations, and it continues to be a real benefit that we are hearing time and time again. So thanks for sharing that. So to round out our time with you today, I just want to spend a few minutes outlining what you can expect with OpenShift. So first, OpenShift provides a trusted container engine. It's built on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, on Kubernetes, and Red Hat Trusted Content. And these three foundational elements are really used to help our customers and organizations run their most mission-critical applications. It's this foundation and this experience that helps reduce risk overall. And then for cloud services in particular, this trust really extends with our partnerships with AWS, with Microsoft, and our joint solutions. So second, OpenShift is a comprehensive application platform. So what does this mean? This means that OpenShift has everything that you need to build, run, deploy, manage, scale your applications out of the box. There's no need to procure individual tools. All that is included. So you're not responsible for integrating those, managing those, etc. So again, it's that platform that is created for you without you having to DIY that platform on your own. And in the case of OpenShift Cloud Services, we're managing that whole stack for you, everything from infrastructure to daily operations. And at the end of the day, this really just improves productivity for your DevOps teams. And this is something that Kim mentioned earlier as one of the big benefits that was found in this TEI study that improved productivity for the DevOps teams as a whole. And then finally, OpenShift provides a consistent hybrid cloud experience regardless of whether you're deploying in a public cloud, in your data center at the edge, wherever. It's a consistent experience. This is really going to increase that flexibility that you have to choose the right environment for your requirements, for really what you need for your application, rather than having to, stick with one environment based on a mandate of some sort or another reason. And so, one last point here, with cloud services in particular, organizations really benefit from that fully managed first-party cloud solution. So what does this mean? So this means for solutions like Azure Red Hat OpenShift and Red Hat OpenShift Service on AWS, that they are Azure and AWS solutions respectively. That means they're procured and billed directly from the cloud providers. That means that they integrate with the cloud tools and services. And that means that you can use your spend or you can use your committed spend for these solutions. So just things to kind of, make your life, the life of your DevOps teams a little easier. Okay, so what's next? So if you are interested in learning a bit more about what we talked about today, maybe sharing what you've heard today with others on your team, these are a few QR codes that can help you get that information more quickly. So first is a direct link to the report that we spoke about today, and Kim has mentioned that as well. It's chock full of additional quotes and some metrics to help you get a better understanding of what you could expect with OpenShift Cloud Services. I really recommend taking a look. You'll have, again, those metrics that Kim talked about. You can kind of play around with that to understand what your own experience would be. And then the quotes just really give a better understanding of what you could expect. You can also check out OpenShift for yourself. We have a free hands-on experience with OpenShift Service on AWS for you and your team to kind of get your feet wet and understand, what it is like deploying an application on OpenShift Cloud Services. So take take a look at that and see what you think. And finally, if you do have more questions, maybe you want to hear more about some specific features or hear from some of our customers directly, check out this third QR code. It's going to take you to our website for you to learn a bit more. So Kim and I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for spending it with us. And now we'll open the floor to questions. All right. Thanks again for joining us for this presentation, and we're happy to be here for some Q&A. So go ahead and put any questions you have for Kim and I into the chat, and we'll get to those. And let's go ahead and look and see any questions that came through during the first part of the presentation. Let's see, we have one here. Did any of the customers interviewed use Kubernetes previously? Kim, is that something that you would mind addressing?
Yeah, sure. We did actually have a good mix. We had several customers who were not new to Kubernetes. So, that sort of sense of, oh, of course it looks good because, they haven't used Kubernetes before is not the case, right? We had folks who were more experienced as well as folks who were less experienced, and they all gave us similar feedback in terms of the kinds of benefits that they were experiencing.
Great, thank you. All right, scrolling through here to see what else we have. All right, here's one. What is different about OpenShift from public cloud Kubernetes? I will go ahead and take that one. It's a great question. It's one that, one that we hear often. I would try to probably make it as simple as possible to say, let's think about it in two different areas. First is that comprehensive app platform. You heard me talk about that earlier in the presentation, but think about OpenShift as a complete app platform. So it does include Kubernetes, like that's critical, super powerful, right? But it's just like one part of the story. You're going to need other tools and services to really build and deploy your applications. And so with standalone Kubernetes, you're essentially creating your own DIY app platform, which works for many, and others, it's not what they prefer to do because you will need those individual tools. You're going to procure them, integrate them, and manage them for yourself over time. So it's really up to your team in terms of how much time, how many resources they want to dedicate to building and managing their own DIY platform. And then they'll be responsible for the updates, not only for your kube distribution, but then also for those other tools and services. So I think the first thing is to think about OpenShift as that app platform. It's not just Kubernetes. I think the next thing to think about is really around consistency, and that we know that OpenShift has that same consistent experience regardless of where you're deploying it. I think the benefit here is that it just opens up those possibilities for your team, makes life a little bit easier for them in terms of where they may want to deploy. They aren't having to, learn new technology, new processes, kind of reduces that learning curve and that time for them. And then I would also say if you are an OpenShift user currently, this really helps, especially if you're using OpenShift on-prem, this will help accelerate that move to the cloud if that's something that you're considering. So those are probably the two main areas that I would say really would help differentiate between OpenShift and other public cloud Kubernetes options. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Can I use my AWS EDP on OpenShift? So I will take that one too. So yes, absolutely. You can use your AWS EDP, which is the enterprise discount program. You can draw down on those funds using Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS. Call that ROSA. You can also use your Microsoft Azure funds, your MAC. You can use those as well for purchasing Azure Red Hat OpenShift, similar with Google and for IBM committed use programs. So that's awesome. Beauty of that is you've already made your commitment to those organizations and have those funds already set aside. So you can use those funds or draw down on those funds with OpenShift Cloud Services. So that's a pretty cool benefit. Let's see what else? Thank you all. And thank you all for everyone who said hello in the comments. Hello back. Let's see. My company is a different size and industry than the ones that you've discussed. How should I apply these results to my company? Kim, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I think is the real benefit of that full study of downloading that and taking a look, because the study includes a whole bunch of tables, for every benefit. There's a complete table that explains, what the assumption was that we made, where that information came from, and then the actual formulas that we went through to come up with the benefit number. So if you take a look and you say, let's say there's a table that says, there were 50 engineers doing XYZ and they saved 20% of their time and they made XYZ salary. You can now look at that and say, okay, well, I have 200 engineers, or I only have 5 engineers. I pay my engineers more than that or less than that. You can go ahead through that and just sort of redo those calculations yourself and get a really good estimate of what your particular ROI and net present value might be.
Great. Thank you, Kim. All right. Question. Do we have a hands-on lab to get a deeper dive into the features of Red Hat OpenShift? Absolutely, we do. Great question. That lab right where you see on your screen here, this middle QR code is a hands-on experience for Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS. Click on that. It's free of charge. For 8 hours, there's tutorials that give you some directions on how to get started and kind of guide you through what to expect. So please take a look at that. If you are interested in a POC, a proof of concept, if you're kind of already, I would encourage you to do this hands-on experience first, but if you'd like to do a POC, reach out to your account team, or you can contact Red Hat directly on our website as well. And we have proof of concepts, POCs available for all of our cloud services. So absolutely, we have that option. We'd like to help you with it. Is AWS ROSA free for the same month? No, it's not free for the same month. It is free for this 8 hours during this hands-on experience. So take advantage of that. And then there's lots of resources there for you to kind of go to some next steps about, other questions. If you are interested in a POC, what those options are and that type of thing. So I encourage you to do that. Let's see, what else did you all ask? Oh, similar here. How, I already use OpenShift on-prem. Who do I contact about cloud services? Well, first, awesome. Thank you for using OpenShift on-prem. Who do you contact about cloud services? I would contact your account team. They are really knowledgeable about all editions of OpenShift. So OpenShift self-managed, OpenShift cloud services, OpenShift on-prem and on the cloud. So your account team is going to be a great resource for you there. If you don't have an account team, no problem. You can request someone to reach out to you via our website at redhat.com. And also, feel free to email me directly. I'm happy to help you or get you in contact with the right person. My email is brooke.jackson@redhat.com. It's Brooke with an E. So feel free. I'm happy to talk to you and help you. Let's see here. Oh, this is kind of a great question. Thank you for submitting this. In addition to ROI, what are some other good ways to convince my leadership team that we need OpenShift? I love that. I can start. Kim, do you want to start? Who would you prefer to get going, or?
Well, why don't you start and then I'll add on.
Okay, I'll start it. I mean, I live and breathe for this question, right? But a couple things, some things that beyond what we just talked about with ROI and some of those metrics, I would think about, have your team think about future infrastructure plans. Don't think about just now, this year. What are your plans or your aspirations in 2 years, in 5 years? You probably want to make sure you have that flexibility. So consider that when you're making plans. Think about any kind of spend that you have already committed. How can you make best use of that? You don't want to leave any of that money on the table, right? And so the beauty of using a joint solution like OpenShift Cloud Services is that you can also use that committed spend, like we talked about earlier in another question. I think about taking that maintenance off of your team. Like, what else could they be doing that would be differentiating for your business, rather than managing infrastructure? Or could it help like with retaining some of the talents because they're excited about what they're working on now, some kind of new technology? So that could be something that is a real benefit that maybe is something kind of out of the box you haven't thought about before.
Yeah, that's what I was going to, sort of hit on is we really heard from everybody that we spoke to, all of these, in all these different industries, different size companies, everything. The one thing that was really consistent with everybody is that, their developers were so much happier. And really, and their minds were opened up, right? Aside from being happier and more productive employees, they were able to be more innovative. They had time to think about things that were not just maintenance or administrative kind of issues. So I think that opening people up like that is a huge benefit that's difficult to quantify, but definitely important.
Yeah, I love that. Oh gosh, let's see here. Other questions? Let's see, you mentioned consistency. Yes, you've heard me say that a lot. Is this mostly a benefit during initial migration? We are already in the cloud. Great question. I think it's absolutely a benefit during that migration, especially if you're already using OpenShift on-prem and you're moving to the cloud. That's really going to accelerate that move. But it's really important to think about that ongoing management, those day two activities. Really think about what your team would be responsible for when they're managing across different environments. We know they're going to have to be responsible for, managing their own version of Linux, for their Kubernetes distribution, for their own container content, for worker nodes, for those individual tools and solutions that they're using as part of that DIY app platform that we talked about. And, those are going to have different release cycles and updates and that type of thing. So I think the consistency there is to think about, consistency, one app platform for those updates and what you're responsible for across multiple environments versus having to do that complexity with managing across different environments. So absolutely day one, it's important. But I think the thing for us to kind of think through is, what does day two look like for me? What else do we have here? Let's see. Do we have sales enablement for resellers? Absolutely. Please go to your materials for your hub for Red Hat. There's information there. And again, if you don't have that, please come directly to me and I'll help you get in contact. Was there anything that surprised you about the study? It's a good question too. Kim, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things surprised me. One was, that, like I talked about before, that consistent feedback about, how much having this technology available to people really changed the way their developers were able to work, and and really freed up creativity. And in addition to that, I think I was surprised at how many unquantified benefits there were. There were lots of different areas, the whole elasticity issue, a number of different things that people commented about. Usually when we do these studies, we have one or two areas that people are really passionate about, benefits they've received that they can't really put a number to. But this time around, in addition to those ones, big benefits that they were able to quantify, there were a lot of additional benefits about, just being able to, run better, get more done, and have more fulfilled employees and more creative output. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love that too. I think what was surprising for me when I read the study was about the different future areas that some of the people called out that were like, okay, we're modernizing now because we're planning for the future with AI. We're planning for the future with some of our sustainability efforts, but we know the first piece of that is modernization, and cloud services is helping us get there faster so we can get to these other futuristic, and some of them aren't so futuristic, they're happening now, projects. So I wasn't expecting to kind of hear those types of activities called out, but it was really encouraging to see that. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Any last minute questions, please add those. It looks like let's see. I think we have them. Yeah, and if you are interested in getting a little more hands-on, we do have workshops as well, where you can spend some time learning OpenShift Cloud Services. And those will also be at Red Hat Summit. If you'll be there, check those out. Find me in the OpenShift booth as well. Love to see you all there. And with that, please make sure if you want to take a look at these slides, they're in the handout section. They'll also be linked in the email after this, along with the TEI report, a few other resources. And this presentation, this webinar will be available for, I think, a year. So feel free to share this with your colleagues. You guys will be speaking the same language in terms of OpenShift Cloud Services and what you can expect. And thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you so much, Brooke and Kim. What a wonderful presentation. Brooke, so much great insight and really important takeaways. I like kind of reframing and really bringing some of the creativity and innovation into the conversation. Kim, I gotta tell you, the entire audience is just in love with your voice. We could listen to you speak all day, and I really wish that we had more time in our webinar, because I feel like we could just sit here and listen to Kim talk about data reports all afternoon. Well, I hope that we'll get another chance to do that coming up in the near future. We'll get Kim and Brooke back to give us some more really wonderful walkthroughs of a report. And as I said, I love reports. I love data. I love going through this kind of, getting to hear from what's actually happening in the industry through this type of data collection. But I also really, really enjoy hearing that interpreted. It's one thing to go through and read the pages and kind of take that in. And as Brooke just mentioned, to share with our teams and to bring that conversation forward to others. But I find that the best learning, and now I'm a little biased because I'm a webinar moderator, right? But I find that the best innovations, the best opportunity to understand language, the best knowledge transfer comes from interacting with it, from taking it off the page and making it come alive. And I think that's what we got to do today with Kim and Brooke. So I'm really glad that you all got to be a part of that today with me. And I hope that you're kind of taking some of those key takeaways away and bringing them forward into conversations in your teams and your organizations. Before you leave us, there's a few things that I want to make sure that we run through. One is the handouts tab, because Brooke was just mentioning that right at the end there, that you can actually access the report. Obviously, again, we've just kind of been waxing poetic about the beauty of conversation, but you do need to come back to that information, right? You need to have that starting place. So you read the report and then you carry that forward into your team. So the report is there for you. Please do download that. You can also get over to the Red Hat site and spend some time exploring there. The team, I know that there were a few questions that we didn't get into, and I see those there. We are going to make sure that those get follow-up. So Brooke will get a chance to review these, and you will hear back from the Red Hat team. So please, if you have any lingering questions, make sure you get those into the questions tab. But a great place to start is visiting that handouts tab and collecting that report and visiting the website. While you're doing all of that, I am going to wrap up our time together today with a prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card going to someone special and live here in the audience. And that special lucky someone is Corinne Golden from Colorado. Corinne Golden from Colorado, you have won a $250 Amazon gift card card. So congratulations to you. We will be in touch shortly about claiming your prize. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Red Hat for making this webinar possible, and a giant thank you to our wonderful speakers here with us today, joining us from Red Hat and Forrester in order to share these really important insights and trends. I have learned so much from both of you, Brooke and Kim, and very much enjoyed both the content and, Kim, as we said, the wonderful delivery of everything that we heard from you today. So thank you both for that. But as always, you know what's coming next. My biggest thank you goes to all of you out there for joining in. As I said, for me, bringing these reports alive through these sorts of discussions is really the best way to interact with the information. And that does not happen without all of you. We cannot have an interactive conversation with no one to converse with. So thank you so much for making some space in your day to come and join in and be a part of this webinar today. I think we've all gotten some really interesting insights into the benefits, some of the maybe potential costs, some of those risks, but more importantly, the flexibility and the overall opportunities involved with this move towards multi-cloud application platform. So I hope that you're all pumped up and ready to learn more and ready to carry those forward. Thank you all so much for joining us again today. I hope that I get to see you all again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.